Hey, Steve here, and in this video you're going to learn a simple technique to add hazy sunlight to your landscape photos in Photoshop. Now, I said simple, and I really do mean it. This technique is kind of so easy that it feels a bit like cheating, so I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. Now, I'll do that in just a second, but first, if you like this technique, then make sure you do hit that thumbs up button and give the video a like to let me know. And remember to click the subscribe button and that little bell notification thingy so that you never miss a new video. Now, one more thing before we get started. My brand new landscape editing masterclass course is available on pre-order now. I'll put a link in the description just below the video. So if you're watching this before the end of June 2019, then you can go in and get that on pre-order right now. If you're watching this after then I'll still make sure the link goes somewhere that you can get all the info you need on the masterclass. But for now, if you want to get a great deal on the pre-order, then go ahead and click that link in the description. Now, with that said, let's get on with the tutorial. So the image that's on screen at the moment is one that I took the other morning, and I was really blessed with some beautiful conditions down in Wollongong this particular morning. So I've only made a couple of adjustments so far. I'll just, for a bit of background, show you what they were. But this isn't what the tutorial is actually about. So basically this is the image after I opened it from Lightroom. And then I've just added a bit of contrast, and I've brightened up the grass a little bit, and then again here brightened it up and added some color. And then I've got just a bit of contrast in the image here as well, into the highlights. So only a few minor adjustments, and the image is already looking pretty good. So that brings us on to what I wanted to show you now, and that is well, it's kind of this technique was kind of born in discovering my sun blur technique. So that was something that I used to help fix an overexposed sky where you've got the sun in the frame. And just playing around with that technique, I kind of stumbled across the fact that just what I'm about to show you here is a really easy way to create an amazing effect. So I'll just run through the steps and show you exactly what it is. Now, the first thing I'll do is just add an empty layer, and then I will select my brush tool, and I'll also zoom out a couple of steps just so that I can use a really large brush. So I'm going to increase the size of the brush just using the right square bracket on the keyboard, and then I'm going to sample a nice warm color, a warm light color from around the sky here. So this kind of yellow sort of peachy color looks really nice. Just so happens I've already got that selected just from a quick test that I ran a minute before hitting record. So I'm going to start off with 30% on the brush opacity, and I'll just click once over here in the top left of the image, and we can see that's kind of basically painted that color directly into the image just on this empty layer. So I'll just do that once more up in this top left, and then I'll just maybe do a big broad brush stroke sort of 3/4 of the way across the image, and you can see that's, well, it's not a realistic or very nice looking effect right now. Let me just do one more dab up here in the top left. So the effect is basically stronger on this left hand side than it is coming over to the right. And yeah, so there's a few variations that we can try once we get to this point. One is to use this as it is, but just reduce the opacity of this whole layer until it kind of blends in and looks a lot less obvious and a bit more natural. So around about 30% on the opacity there of the layer. And we can see this is before and now this is after. So we've got that kind of hazy light leaking in from the left hand side of the frame. Now, if you stick with using it this way, then you probably want to add a layer mask and just kind of mask it out of all the areas that it shouldn't be. So, for example, that haze, it wouldn't really make much sense being so close in the foreground here. So I'll just rub that out in the mask, and now we can see the effect is kind of, it's maintained just in the sky, and it's stronger over here on the left where the sun is. And then it comes across to the right and just kind of hits the edge of the lighthouse there. So let me just delete that layer mask. So that was one way we could go, just using it in the normal blend mode. I'll just bung it back up to 100% opacity on the layer now, and show you the other variations. Basically, every time I use this, I always like to try all three variations. So first is in normal blend mode, and then next would be overlay, and then next soft light. So each of these give a slightly different effect, and it's worth experimenting with that and then blending the layer in using the opacity of the layer here to sort of dial in that perfect effect. And there we go. So that is the main part of the technique. Now step 2, which is where we're going to get really take this up a level, is kind of like a variation, or maybe you could call it an advanced version of what we've just done. So I'll leave this layer on. I'll just turn the opacity down a bit, and I'll leave it on overlay blend mode. I think that looks quite nice. And we'll just add another adjustment, another layer for this to separate the two effects. So I'll add an empty layer. And okay, let's put this directly onto overlay blend mode, just in preparation for what we're about to do. Now let's say that we want this side light effect to only kind of appear on the lighthouse there. So it kind of really makes the lighthouse pop and adds that contrast, and it really gives that impression of that sunlight hitting the lighthouse there. Now the easy way to do this for this particular image would be to create a mask for the layer that we just created, so that anything that we do in this layer only affects the lighthouse. And the easiest way, just by way of the fact that the sky is blue behind the lighthouse there, we can use the color range tool in the select menu. So I'm going to do that. And again, this is already showing you the preview from last time. I just sort of ran this through before recording. So we'll assume, let's click over here somewhere. So we'll assume that we've opened the color range select panel, and none of this is preset yet. So what you want to do is create a selection where the sky is going to be black, because we want to exclude the black in the layer mask we're using this selection for. So I've got invert checked here. Now if I start clicking around, for example, if I click in the grass here, we're going to create a selection that is isolating the grass and the greens and all of those similar colors in the image. And you can see that represented in the little preview window up here. So whenever I click on a green area, it's going to select all the greens in the image. And I can control, using the fuzziness, how far away from that original color I'm willing to let this go. So the more fuzzy, the more it will kind of blend in with the surrounding colors. And if I click in the blues of the sky, for example, you'll see there we've selected the sky. That's white, everything else is black. Now what we want is the opposite of this. So we want the White House to be, the lighthouse to be white. Now we could do that by selecting the colors of the lighthouse, but I think because the sky is such a big area of blue, it's going to be really easy for us to kind of basically go the other way around and select the sky. But to do what we need to do, we need to just hit the invert checkbox here. And so I'm selecting the blues in the sky, just going to increase the fuzziness. And I'll use the eyedropper with the plus tool, with the plus symbol, so that I can just click around and add more blues to this selection. And okay, that looks pretty well isolated now, so I can be happy that that's going to give me a good layer mask. So let's just click OK, and that will load the selection. And now with the selection active on this layer that I just created a moment ago, I'll hit the new layer mask button. And now, so let's sample again a light warm color from over here on the left hand side of the sky, and clicking in the actual layer this time. Well, actually, let me go back to normal so we can see more obviously what's happening here. I can just brush that color into the lighthouse, and we can see it's not brushing into the sky. So if I turn this off and on, we're actually getting a bit of foreground as well, but I think that's okay. So this is restricting the brush stroke to the lighthouse without going in the sky. And so now if I just put this back on overlay blend mode, we can see that's added a really nice intense light to the edge of the lighthouse. And it's also, because of the color that I've used, it's actually changed the color a little bit. So maybe what we could do is select more of a pinky color, and that might give it a bit more of a pinky, original sort of pink glow. Well, that doesn't look great actually. It's starting to look a bit weird. So let me just grab the eraser tool and get rid of that I painted in, and we can just start over with a slightly different color this time. So again, grabbing the brush tool, maybe a slightly more peachy color, and overlay blend mode, and we can just start brushing it there. I think that looks pretty good. So again, it's just helping to add to that the three-dimensionality of the lighthouse by increasing the light on the left-hand side where the sun would be shining on it. So again, just to quickly recap, the original effect gives us this sort of big broad wash of light coming in, leaking in from the left-hand side where the sun originates, just outside the frame. And that's just using a massive brush just to literally paint a color into the sky and then change the overlay, change the blend mode or reduce the opacity to blend it in. And then this second variation that I gave on the same sort of technique is doing the same thing, but just isolating it to the main subject there that is bearing the brunt of that light shining on it, just to really make it pop. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and you can get something out of these techniques and give them a go. Let me know how you get on.